What's up, guys? So this week I'm going to be doing a different video on the channel. It's going to be more of a how I did it video, not a DIY. But it's just one of the first videos out of a group of videos that I will be putting together doing the next few steps of modifying on my car. What's up, guys? So today we're gonna be doing a fuel pressure regulator setup on my daily. It's a 2013 Subaru WRX. So I'm gonna be doing a aeromotive regulator on it. Also going to add a flex fuel sensor and a Innovate flex gauge. This car has been on E85 for almost 3 years, but now we are trying to see if we put a different turbo on it, and I just want to be able to adjust the fuel pressure on it to get a little bit more headroom out of the injectors and to be able to monitor the flex content in the pump E85 that I use. So first things first is we're gonna have to relieve the pressure on the fuel system. So what I'll do is I'll start the car right now, and right now I am going to pull the fuel pump fuse and then basically let the car run until it shuts off. So we already got the fuse puller on the fuel pump fuse, so we'll just pull that out. Now we'll just let it idle, and that's it. So there should be no pressure. I mean, the regulator will still hold a little bit of pressure, so I'll let it sit for a few minutes. I'll open the gas cap, and then I'll start taking it all apart. Just leave that like that. All right, so I've gone ahead and disconnected the negative from the battery terminal. I've loosened the charge piping on these two clamps, and that's basically just going to give me a little bit more room to mess with these fuel lines, which this is the feed and the factory return. All right, so it's been a little bit, so now I'm going to start loosening the screws for the fuel pressure regulator. As you can see, that's the regulator right there. This is the return line that I'm touching with my ring finger. So you've got one screw there, and there's another one on the other side. Seems like using a 1/4-inch ratchet with the bit on the end. I put a little tape on it so it wouldn't fall out. Seems like this is going to be the easiest way to get it off. Alright, so I got the two screws out. They go here and here, which turned out to be a real pain in the butt. So now I'm going to take this off and start building the line off of here. That is going to be my new feed line, starting from basically here. I'll show you. All right, so if you guys remember from the beginning, I said the top was feed, this is evap, and then the bottom was the return, since it was coming, the feed was coming, you know, from the rail through all the, from the pump through the rails, then back to the regulator, which would make this on the bottom the return. But since we're taking the factory regulator off and we're putting this adapter, this top line is going to feed everything, still feed out of this, through this, and then this is going to feed into our regulator. All right, guys, so that took way longer than expected. But you can see I have the adapter back on, and I have the hose. This is going to be going to the feed side of the regulator. I just have it really long so I can cut it to size, but that's the next part. I might cut it, you know, short for tonight and just continue tomorrow during the day. All right, so I figured I'd try to run some of the lines. So as you can see, I have the feed going under there, coming all the way around. That's going to the top port of the regulator. Now I have a 90 coming off the regulator to a short section of hose. That's going to the flex sensor, And for now, I just have like a little short piece of mock-up 5/8 hose. But I need to go in the morning and pick up another couple feet of it, because it's going to go from the flex sensor all the way back to the pull stamper right here. And that completes that. Oh, and I also have the vacuum line ran on the intake manifold port. I just have to basically make a little bracket for the regulator and then just cut the hose to size. All right, so it's the next morning. I took the regulator off. I'm starting to make a small bracket for it, but just a quick recap of the lines. We've got our feed coming from the pump. It's going through the rails out to where the old regulator used to be, which this is now continuing to be a feed, which is going out to this -6 fitting, going all the way around. This is going to feed into the regulator. Now this is going to be the return from the regulator, which is going to go through the flex sensor. And I went and picked up some 5/16 line, which will replace this piece that's on the barb end of the flex sensor. And that'll be coming right back to here. Now, since I am trying to mount the regulator where the old top mount intercooler used to sit, I'm making a bracket for it so it sits at an angle like that. And I am using a small piece of scrap aluminum that I had. I already started to bend it into shape. Now I gotta cut a little slit into it here so that it actually will clear the fitting. Then I could drill the holes and make holes for the mounting hardware. Alright, so I just finished up with a real rough first version of the bracket. I took a small piece of 3" by 3" aluminum that I had laying around. I basically put 2 bends in it with my vise and made some holes on the bottom for the hardware. Overall, pretty happy with how it looks. Now I'm just gonna shape it up and basically clean up the bracket, since it was a piece of scrap metal. But I feel like it looks pretty good. All right, so I just finished with the return line. So the bottom line there, not the top pull stamper, the bottom one, that's the return line. So as you can see, that's looping around there. It comes back and coming from the flex sensor from the bottom of the regulator. Now I'm waiting on the bracket to dry up. I just put some paint on it, but that's basically it on here. So the next part we're going to work on is basically getting the wiring from the flex sensor, which is this pigtail. We're going to get that to the inside of the car. Now I do have a wideband gauge in the car already, so that's this wire going back in. And the last time I just made a small cut in the boot here for the wire harness, and I just snuck it in by the passenger side footwell. I'm probably going to try to use the same spot again. Alright, so I got the harness pushed through the grommet finally. So you see the harness is plugged in there. Have it come up, have it run along these OEM wires. And now I just have to basically finish fishing this end through to the inside of the car and then put the grommet back on. Alright, so I'm in the passenger footwell. Here's the first cable I showed you guys, that's for the wideband. And here is the new cable for the flex fuel gauge. Alright guys, so we're all buttoned up here. First thing I'm going to do is just put the key on and make sure that the flex fuel gauge that I just put in is working. Once I see that the wiring is working and the gauge turns on, I'm going to go ahead and put the key on and put the fuel pump fuse back in, and then check if there's any leaks after it primes. Alright, going to put the key in. Gauge starts. So does the other one. They're both wired onto the same circuit, so that's a good sign. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the key off, put the fuel pump fuse back in, and let the fuel system prime. Okay, so I put the key on once, and as you can see, there's some fuel up there, as the sensor is already reading 77%. It was at 0 before. So I'm just going to cut it off and cut it on a few times just to make sure the system completely primes up. So checking all of our connections. We have one here. This one over here was messed with. And then we've got pressure over here also. Okay, so I've had the car running for a few minutes. I don't see any leaks or smell any fuel. The next thing I'm going to do is set the fuel pressure. It's a little low, so it should be about 43 psi. Alright, so I checked the fuel pressure without the vacuum source on it, and it was spot on. It was right around 43 psi. I've had the car running for about 15 minutes or so. So go, idling fine. And I've got my flex gauge over here. It's reading right about 77%. It's pretty good for a pump E85.